Don Frazier. I talked to you about him when I introduced his book, the Will James books. I highly recommend the book still today. Don is 90 years old, and frankly speaking, he's been a little bit slowed down with sickness and the medication that he has to take. But I did want to pay tribute to the man and introduce him to you, since he's played such a major role in reintroducing Will James in the public eye in the 90s because of the book, but also because of his contribution as a founder of the Will James Society. Like many of his contemporaries, Don did have to ride a lot on the back of a horse from home to school. What was the name of your horse?
Mickey. I was full of energy, and I tried nutrition quite a bit. At 6 years old, I figured I could fall off better than anybody I'd ever known. When I was 15, all the kids my age were 6 inches to a foot taller than I was. And I would want to be able to do all the things that the cowboys did.
He didn't have stature, and he was growing up the only little boy among a lot of young teenage and young 20s age males. They didn't make life easy for a little boy. They made it hard, and he's hard on himself anyway. He has a tremendous feeling of responsibility, and he brought that with him to everything in life.
But he wouldn't let me ride anything but race horses. And he wouldn't let me do any work on the ranch. He was afraid I'd get hurt.
This is Dad on one of the ranch horses because he used to race them, both flat races and steeplechases.
That was September of 1946.
So you remember that moment very well, I guess. After the war, the love for the woman who became his wife brought him to New Jersey, where he became a successful businessman. And this success allowed him to develop his passion for the books.
His hobby, as he said, was book collecting. And eventually, he not only collected them, but he dealt in books. He traded, he sold, and he started a book business called Dark Horse Books.
My first Will James book was Big Enough.
And you know, my camper's name is Big Enough. I called it Big Enough because it's very small, but it's a very good, very efficient camper. So I decided to call it Big Enough.
Will James articulated for Dad something that I think he always has found it difficult to convey to people. The fascination of the ranching life was the ranching life, and it was a working life. These were people who worked hard in fascinating circumstances with animals they loved and respected. That was the ranching life to Dad. Will James made it possible for Dad to help people see what the ranching life was really like. And he frankly loved Will James for showing that in a way that was enduring, that lived on in his books. One of his watchwords, though, is getting the job done. And you will see that in the essay he wrote at the end of his book called The Book of Will James Books. He writes a little bit about himself and the way he grew up on the ranch, and the fact that for them all on the ranch, the important thing was to get the job done. That's what he has always sought to do. And Dad carried that watchword with him throughout his life. Well, as you saw in his rooms here, in his office, in his home, he had all of the pictures up, he had all of the books out. He would talk at the drop of a hat about Will James. He would introduce people to the pictures, he'd show them the books. It's been a powerful part of Dad's life since he was 7 years old.
Well, it was a tool.